maintain their relative lines. So Scott looking back to the low side.
Yeah, the big winner in this might be Regan Smith, who was behind, just sort of biding his time, cooling his tires. Everything you just saw out of Brian Scott comes at a price.
So Trevor now in position for the Dash for Cash. He's the only one of the four who has not won a nationwide Dash for Cash this season. So I'd like to make that different. It would only be fair, in Trevor's mind, if he would get one.
Fair?
In racing? There's no fairness in racing. Kwasniewski now, his car coming to life a little bit, trying to pressure the 7 of Smith.
I think he's done a really good job. Dylan Kwasniewski has obviously learned as he's gone along here, and he's made some mistakes, but it's happening less frequently, and he's got speed. And he's battling among really good drivers, and that's the best way to learn. And I think that gives you more. If you're on the fast track, it's because you're up front learning from the best. If you're stuck in the middle, well, sometimes you get bad habits.
Vince has more in the 42.
Well, remember, Kwasniewski worked with this crew chief, Scott Zippitelli, when they were here in May as well, because Dylan Kwasniewski was in this 42 car, and they had a top 5 kind of day going at that race here in May, and then had a right front issue late in the race, had to go back deep into the field, and then still managed to race their way back to an 11th place finish. So Dylan Kwasniewski has a comfort level around this place, and certainly he and Scott Zippitelli have hit on something here at Iowa.
And Dylan trying to impress Mom this week. Jen doesn't make it to every race, but I talked to her earlier today, and she's glad to be here to watch son Dylan try to chase down the leaders here at the Iowa Speedway. Speaking of which, it is still Keselowski. He's had the point since the restart over Sam Hornish. Hornish right now just a little over a second behind as we wind it down here at Iowa. Welcome back to the NASCAR Nationwide Series at Iowa. The U.S. Cellular 250. NASCAR fans can visit NASCAR.com/green to learn more or make a donation. Brad Keselowski continues to pace the field here at Iowa. That's the gap back to second place, Sam Hornish. And Sam had been within about 0.7 of a second to our leader. That's about as close as he got.
Sam is actually matching lap times right now with Brad Keselowski. So with 40 to go, we're reaching a point where, you just air it out.
Yep, and we've talked about how much did Keselowski have left. Well, he proved it by passing the 54 on track. 54 did get by on pit road, and Sam has had a great race car, but right now, the 22, the class of the field.
Yeah, and so if he continues with this separation, 8-10 car lengths, Sam will be forced to come off the bottom of the racetrack and move around and just try to find something different, something that nets speed. Not that you want to, but that's just the hand you're dealt.
There's Michael McDowell running in third. He grabbed that on the restart from Trevor Bayne. So McDowell having a fine run tonight, again in the 20 car. And the 9 of Chase Elliott runs in the 4th position. He had a fantastic restart, picked up a lot of spots. And that's put him in a good position here.
You love to see your driver at his best when it matters the most. And that's the last quarter of the race. That's a trend you've gotten from Chase Elliott pretty much all year long.
Trevor Bayne running in 5th right now. The highest running of our Dash for Cash eligible drivers. Baines had a good night, started on the pole. He led 31 laps. Right now not able to quite chase down the leaders. Brian Scott has now moved back to the 6th position in the 2 car. We saw him racing side by side with Trevor a few laps back. That battle has ended for the moment. Brian hoping his car will come in the late laps here. He can gain some spots back. Regan Smith looking for a championship take here at some point. He's, as they run, 7 points behind Chase Elliott and runs in the 7th position. Just getting around Dylan Kwasniewski. Kwasniewski running in the 8th position. mentioned earlier, working with his team car this weekend instead of the normal 31 for him. And then back to Ty Dillon in the 3. Ty's had an interesting evening.
Hung the lug nut on the last pit stop, Dave, and lost several spots. Came in 5th, went out 12th. That's tough late in the race. Jim, you got more on that?
Yeah, Ricky, you're absolutely right. Ty Dillon just disappeared, running 5th, as you said, and really with a good car that was getting better all night long. And then the pit stop, they were slow on the right front. That threw off the timing on the left front. And you mentioned that hung lug nut. Ty Dillon immediately got on the radio to Danny Stockton and said, all right, Danny, figure out how we can get some track position back. But there were going to be precious few opportunities, maybe no more opportunities to do so.
Challenges of this sport, Ricky. So good last week. Beat the Cup drivers at Indianapolis, and then this week struggling.
Yeah, you're tested every week. You know, the great thing about the sport is that every 7 days you get an opportunity to either redeem yourself or back it up. And this isn't what they were looking for, the 3 team, but they can hang their hat on having won. I mean, in this world, it's about winning or losing. That does make a season.
Running behind Ty in the 10th position. Let's call it effort paying off. Took the trouble to go all the way from Pocono out here to Iowa. Did land in Castle along with Brad Keselowski. And it has paid off, a top 10 run for this team. And that's a good night for them. Back up front, Brad Keselowski handily taking care of the field right now. The distance, just less than half a second, though. So Sam Hornish still within striking distance of Keselowski here at Iowa. Back at the Iowa Speedway, Brad Keselowski's now led about half of this race. 125 laps the next time by. And is the final run going to be a long one or a short one, depending on which year you're going to go with here? 22 laps the last couple of times, and we're just about down to that right now. Are we going to get a caution late and mix it all up? We'll see.
If we don't get a caution, this is the greatest example of why they call it driving. Okay, it's got nothing to do with being tight or loose anymore. It's got nothing to do with how good or bad your car's driving. As it relates to Brad Keselowski and Sam Hornish, it comes down to who wants it the most. And they're going to run every lap like it's their last. And this is my favorite part of the day.
By the way, if this run goes green to the end, it'll be 61 laps. So that'll fall into that earlier category of a long run at the end of the race. So Sam on lap 228, 0.8 of a second back, and that gap just increased. It looked to us for a while, Ricky, like 22 was coming back to him a little bit. Maybe Brad encountered some lap traffic. It was down to 0.4 of a second, but seems like Brad is able to pretty much do what he wants to out front now in the 22.
Yes, and we'll know if Sam Hornish is overdriving if the left side tires come off the yellow line. He hasn't deviated. He's been on the yellow line all night. It's where his car's been best. It's where he's made speed. So the first indication that he's overdriving, try to catch Brad, is if he comes off that line. And a little bit high right there.
Keselowski motoring off of 2. Relatively straight back stretch, curved front stretch, a lot like Richmond. A little bit bigger track than Richmond. On board with Hornish underneath Ryan Sieg.
The track possesses unique challenges, and the bump in turn 2 is the most obvious. And how you get through that bump has a lot to do with how fast a lap you're going to have, because if the car doesn't set and come up off the corner straight over the bump, you're going to have your hands full, probably have to roll out of the gas a few times. 3 and 4 has sort of a washboard effect. You go back to earlier in the day when you made a few laps with me, and really, really strange sound coming out of your voice as we were going through the corners and speed.
I had a lot on my mind at that point, including my entire life.
Well, it's fair. You remember,
flashing before my eyes.
You remember my final days in the sport as a driver weren't real good, so you had reason to be concerned. But the track is rough, and as the tire pressures build and the rubber wears off the tires, it becomes even more miserable. It's not a good ride. But like I said, it's time to empty the tank.
Here's a good ride right here. $100,000 at stake between these two. Trevor Bayne in that 6 car running 5th. Brian Scott trying to chase him down. Rick DeBrule.
I just want to flash flash back to the very beginning of the race. Right before it started, we were interviewing Trevor Bayne, and I was asking, does this $100,000 Dash for Cash affect you? He was like, well, no. He said, but, late in the race, if I'm not leading the race, and I've got a guy racing me for Dash for Cash right behind me, yeah, it's going to come into play. So right now, just a few moments ago, those two were duking it out of the track, and Trevor Bayne made it to keep the advantage. He has not been happy with this car all night, but when he needed it, he dug a little deeper and was able to keep Brian Scott at bay.
Money makes people do really strange things.
Well, did you ever have an incentive waved in front of you from your car owner, or a NASCAR halfway award or something like that back in the day?
Yeah, Cal Wells gave me a big bonus if I won in the Tide car, and if you go back to Darlington, well.
Nice. Yes, it was. Kurt Busch didn't think it was that great, but you guys had a great battle.
Yeah, he was good about it. But I mean, that's what the sport's about. It's really about just leaving nothing in the tank. And sometimes it comes at the price of relationships or friendships. But you know what? That really shouldn't interfere. This is about you against 42 others every week. And this has been a really good race tonight. This Dash for Cash, I think, is going to heat up here in the last 14 laps.
Now, Brian looked like he pushed a little wide that time through the center of the corner, so he may be giving it all he's got right now. 14 to go, by the way, and I was going to ask that actually about our leaders, too. At what point does Sam show his full hand to try to track down Brad Keselowski, who's now in heavy traffic?
Dave, I think he's showing it, and he has been. But this helps. You got to be very careful going through traffic, and when you get careful, sometimes it's distraction. You slow down too much getting in the corner, and then you miss your mark. And then that interrupts where you go back to the gas. And this is an exaggeration, but it's almost like you forget how to drive if you try to be careful. Drivers are at their best when they're running every lap like it's a qualifying lap.
Brad trying to get around the 19 of Mike Bliss. Vince?
Yeah, Ricky, you hit the nail on the head. They have shown their hand. The 54, that's what they've got. And crew chief Adam Stevens told Sam Hornish just a short while ago, I don't think we've got anything for him, but hang in there, take care of your stuff. We'll see what happens. So that lap traffic or possibly a late yellow and a restart will give them that opportunity. You can be sure that Stevens hasn't given up, and neither has Hornish. But if it stays green, they're going to need something big to happen for him to catch the 22.
Yeah, it's very obvious that the 22, from the moment Brad Keselowski got here, which the third lap he made was the fastest of the weekend of anybody here. And the 54 and Sam Hornish, they've battled back. They had a 7th, 8th, 9th place car throughout most of the practice, and I applaud them. They've done a great job tonight.
And they knew they had a great car. You chuckled about the team looking over at the 22 who hadn't arrived yet and saying, yeah, we're pretty good, but we're going to wait and see when they get here how we really are. And it proves out that the 22 was really the car to beat tonight.
Yeah, something about this racetrack suits Brad Keselowski. And Jeremy Bullins told me earlier in the day that this team's at their best on rough racetracks. I tell you, that was a shot across the bow of the competition, because you're talking about a team and a crew chief that can win with any driver, it appears, right? I mean, they're just so good and so capable.
Oh, trouble up ahead of him. And this will bring out the caution. It's the late caution the 22 team may have dreaded as James Buescher has found trouble on the front stretch.
And that was right in front of the leader. This is a game changer here. Do you come to pit road?
I'm looking at you. You were the driver. What would you say?
Yeah, well, I'm giving me too much credit here. I don't have any idea.
Buescher was 15th when he got into some sort of mess down the front straightaway. And Keselowski, after dominating in the late laps, stretching the lead out, now sees that completely gone away. So we'll get a late race restart here at Iowa.
Dave, I honestly don't know what the leaders are going to do, but I can tell you that probably 6th, 7th on back, they're coming for tires.
So you see heavy contact for James Buescher as he'll bring that car down pit road. Go to work on that. So in the late laps, Ricky, you've got to focus. Well, let's just take a look and see if we can see what happened.
Wow.
He was racing with Ryan Reed and Brendan Gaughan, and that was a hard right turn into the fence. There may have been some contact there.
Yeah, and we got to go back because it looked as though it was 3 wide coming up off the corner. And I don't know if he got hooked. I don't know if he ran out of racetrack.
But that is the result. Big front end damage for the 99.
The tire marks on the side, on the right side, always brings an element of
pit
question.
road is open, Ricky. Let's see what they do.
Leaders are going by, and here comes.
They're coming. They are coming. Brad Keselowski at the last second dives onto pit road, and he brings